Roots and wings, right? The only legacy that we truly leave our children. The idea of children wasn't something that I've always had an affinity for, especially in the West. It seems like from economics to social to politics, everybody's against the idea of the nuclear family. This country is not set up for that. There's a war against that, it seems like. And I was keenly aware of that. But once I moved out of the country for a bit and traveled, that's where I met my wife. You know, when you meet a woman who is raised to be a wife and a mother, who truly appreciates the qualities that are exclusively female, doesn't see them as a negative. Right? He's a feminist. That's one of those funny things about feminists, is even though they talk about female empowerment, when you look at the qualities that they deem to be empowering women, they're just masculine qualities. And all the feminine qualities that make them special, that makes them actually have value, those are the ones that they tend to throw away and sort of just pretend like they're antiquated. They're 1950s, right? It's not who they are anymore. So with that in mind, I was like, man, like, as a man who's trying to improve his life and build something for himself, the idea of having kids here, having a woman here in the United States, it's too much of a risk, very little reward. You're fighting an uphill battle for nothing. So when I met her and the idea of having children was something that she talked about from the get-go. The concept of having principles in a relationship was something that was solidified for me at that moment, because the idea of bringing in another human being who did not choose you, right? They didn't get to choose you as their parent, to bring him in a situation in which it's chaotic, it's not stable, to have parents who are moved by their most basic human tendencies, parents that are not going to offer them any real advantage in this world, grow up in an environment that holds them back more than it uplifts them. I was like, what's the point of doing that? I'm not going to do that. So the idea that the interactions between me and my wife had to be on point, and that our relationship had to be as healthy as possible, a big part of that was the idea of it, that we're going to have children, and the culture and the environment in that home had to be one in which fosters the best in them and minimize as much as we can the damage the parents and the parents can have on you, right? And give them as much advantage as we can. Not necessarily monetarily, because I've actually noticed that is not, I think most people tend to focus on the physical when they think about the legacy. But the true legacy you can leave your kids, like I said, it's roots and wings. Roots refers to the principles, the guiding principles, the foundation that starts between you and your wife. That's the primary foundation. Your character, right? Your wife's character. Because I've noticed also, like, kids, even when I look at my own life, kids don't learn by the things you tell them. The things you do, though, your character. I see a lot of my father in me, for the best and for the negative, by the way. So I was like, okay, like I could be a great surgeon, I could be a great salesperson. They don't get to see that. What they see is the interactions that I have with my wife, interactions that I have with my brother, interactions that I have with people close to me. So that has to be the main focus. Those interactions have to be healthy, and it can't be faked. It has to be real. And it can't be real by just following what you feel, because our feelings are erratic. It has to be based on some strong foundation, built on principles that don't change, that have worked for millennia. So I tried my best to kind of come up with these principles that at least will work for me and my wife, and see how those worked. And we've been together for 6 years before we decided to have our first child. And the reason why I did that was just to make sure that truly the principles in which we made for this family that I created, both my wife and I truly followed them, and they became a part of our character. It wasn't just a slogan, it wasn't a rhetoric, it wasn't something that you say to feel good about yourself. That's what roots are. Those are the principles. Wings is something that I've learned recently. It's the idea of creating an environment where your children can actually get to explore who they truly are. I think as parents, or even as a person, your life, you're living a lot of scripts that were handed down to you. Like what you're supposed to do, how you're supposed to do it, like who came up with that. There are things that, for example, that you fear, embarrassment, certain things that you don't, that are based on your personality, that come directly not from you. They're not a part of who you really are. There are things that were passed down to you. So creating an environment for my children where it leaves them enough space to find themselves, to find what's important for them. That was a paradigm shift for me, for sure. Because the point of having your kids until they're 18, raising them, is to give them tools, essentially. It's not to hide them from the world, but to give them enough tools so that they can conquer the world. And as I was speaking about monetary, I think a lot of times parents think about like the legacies, the amount of money you leave your kids in a bank account. If you look at the data, any like wealth, what they call generational wealth, it tends to end by the third generation. Because real wealth isn't the money you leave, it's the tools you leave for. It's the ability to gain that wealth. That's what truly matters. Even if you look at like the richest family, like the Rothschilds or the Rockefellers. I was talking to this one guy who is in the insurance business, and he was telling me about the trust that the Rockefellers created for all people, for all their family tree. And it was extremely extensive. It wasn't just the idea of getting money. You had to get certain degrees that would pay for your education only when you're finished with it, right? And then you have to come up with one of the stipulations, you have to come up with the business idea. It has to be vetted by the lawyers. And then you get the funds for that business idea, but you're going to have to return the money back, because the idea is you keep returning the money back so that the next generation can also do the same thing. But that is monetary gain, but it comes to a lot of like real life principles that must be followed. Expectation of some sort of performance. That's the only way they were able to maintain that wealth for so many years. So for me, I had to focus like on the idea, like, okay, so even if you look at like super rich families, the fathers, when they have children, fathers are really involved. When they want to create their children to be as effective as they are, they have to like manufacture these, they have to create a simulation of hardship. So you see people who have like everything, but the father doesn't give their kids any allowance, and the kids have to earn every single cent. They have to go work, even though their dad can literally give them enough money to do whatever they want for the rest of their lives. Why? Because there is lessons to be learned by going through hardship. There are character traits that can only be acquired, tools that can only be acquired through those hardships, and money does not solve that. Money does not solve that for you. In fact, if anything, money can actually really destroy somebody's soul. I've always wondered why like these celebrities, once they've worked so hard, they've done all these things for many years, they make so much money, and then they just end up giving majority of it away. There's something about that. There's something spiritual about that. So it's like, okay, so I have to focus on making sure that my kids are spiritually, mentally strong. They have the tools to handle the world, not necessarily monetarily. But even though that will be there to take care of them, to make sure that they grow up without much of a worry. But the most important thing is the root and the wings.